What's the most disastrous plumbing mistake that I've seen? Let's talk about it.
I'm Kenny Molotov, licensed plumber, professional magician, and entertainer. On this channel, I go through the ins and outs of my career in plumbing. I take you through a day in the life and we talk tools, theory, and mindset. I'm trying to give you an arsenal of knowledge and an online resource so you can take this trade head on and find yourself successful on the other end. Click subscribe, hit that bell notification, and let's talk pipes.
Peeps, Kenny Molotov. Check out MolotovPlumbingAcademy.com so you can get courses that are specifically designed to help you succeed in your apprenticeship. Also, join our newsletter. That way you know when we have content coming out to you all and anytime there's a new product like a course or something else. So I wanted to talk to you all about a pretty disastrous plumbing mistake that I have had to go and inspect recently. And this really broke my heart. Honestly, I really felt for the plumber that ended up having this happen to them because unfortunately, the insurance was going to go after their insurance and they were very panicked by this, and I'll tell you the entire story about it. So what ended up happening was, just so you know on my end of things, there are certain times where I'm called in to do investigations to find out why leaks took place. So I go into this brand new house. It's 5 months old and it's a custom home. It is ginormous and it's multiple millions of dollars. You can tell that the homeowner spent a pretty penny on this and that they went all out on engineering and design and you name it, top dollar for this home. Walking into this house was like I had to lift my jaw up off the floor. It was spectacular. I met the homeowner and the first thing that this homeowner did was describe to me what happened. She walks into her house one day and the entire basement was filled with water, like a foot high, the entire basement. And they ended up walking over to the sump pump, the storm sump pump, and that storm sump pump had not activated. And on top of that, there was supposed to be a backup alarm inside the sump pump, and that backup alarm didn't activate either. So this was a disaster, and so much water ended up getting into this place. And when I had gotten there, there was a restoration crew already cutting the drywall about halfway up the wall through the entire space. The square footage on this was ginormous. You can get lost in this house. So they ended up talking to me about how, for some reason, the sump pump didn't activate. And they showed me a video where it takes them shaking the sump pump in order to activate the sump pump. So I kind of sat back, listened to this entire story, watched the video that they had, and I kind of sat back and I went, I wonder what's going on here. So I looked at the entire pit, and I have footage of this and maybe it'll come out in a vlog at some point. I looked at the entire pit and the pit looks to be in good functional order. I ended up taking out the sump pump and testing the sump pump, and the floating device which activates the sump pump looked to be in good working order as well. This thing's brand new. It's months old. So I ended up looking at the wiring was fine. I ended up looking at the float was fine. And I sat back and I spent some time trying to figure out how the heck, why was it not firing when it should have been firing, sort of thing. So inevitably, I came to realize that the only way that the float didn't activate is if the pump was right up against the wall of the pit. So the float, if it's up against the wall of the pit, it will get lodged there and it won't actually float. There's too much friction. So it will not come up so that it activates and the pump turns on. I figured that out after an hour of investigating and I went, oh, I think that's the only way that this float doesn't allow to go up. So I ended up calling the homeowner down, looking at the video again and seeing the video and realizing that the pump was right up against the wall. And the first thing that you have to consider is a plumber never puts the pump on the wall. And this plumber that installed this did not do it either. That's the truth of it. The pipe that was going up from the pit was dead center to the pit. But that's when I realized, oh, the pump is moving. And that's when I kind of pieced it together why this ended up happening. Here's something that you have to realize. When you take a pump and you turn it on, there is a tremendous amount of torque that takes place for this pump to activate. So whenever we put a pump inside a well, we put something on the pump called a torque arrestor. And this arrestor is basically designed to stop the pump from twisting too much inside the well because it can twist to the point that it rips all the wiring off. That's how strong these things are, right? There's a lot of torque that takes place. So you have to imagine now, if you were to put a pump inside a pit and leave it there to its own devices and not secure it. That's what I mean. And this float turns on. The pump activates. It torques a little bit. This pump eventually starts walking. And I'm not talking about on one activation. I'm talking about dozens of activations. There's just a tiny little jolt for it to turn on, so it'll move just a bit. It'll turn off eventually, and then it'll turn on again in a half hour. Turns on a tiny little jolt. So it's moving ever so slightly, but after a dozen, 2 dozen, 3 dozen activations, it's in an entirely different area than the one it originally started in. And unfortunately, it's making its way to the pit wall. That's what it's doing. And the float goes up against the pit wall. It has too much friction and it doesn't activate. And that's why there was this large damage that took place inside the basement of this person's house. I figured this out. I showed the homeowner. I verified for them what I think took place, how it took place. I showed it to them. I even recreated it and showed them a video of it. And we're fairly confident that that's probably the reason why this entire ordeal took place. So I write up a report. I get paid. I send this report to the homeowner and also the insurance. They need a report to be able to move forward with insurance, basically. And this report inevitably got into the hands of the previous plumber. And the previous plumber was not happy with the report. They didn't agree with it, and they wanted to have a conversation with me. So I was supposed to go back and do some work for this person on the pump. And in that conversation, this homeowner eventually said to me, by the way, my plumber's going to come here. This plumber wants to speak to you. And I'm sitting back going, why does anybody want to talk to me? I'm a nobody in this situation, dude. My report means nothing. It just tells insurance why this took place, to the best of my understanding, but it is not a legal document that you can take to court and say, this person's wrong, here's Kenny Molotov's report. That's not how this report works. Do you know what I'm saying? My report literally tries to figure out the reason for the leak or the reason for the damages and what we can do going forward, but it doesn't tell anybody who's at fault. I am not qualified to point fingers and tell you if somebody's at fault here. I have no idea, sort of thing. So I had to let the homeowner know, listen, that's not my job. That's not my scope. I am not going to do this. I do not consent to this conversation. I really don't like the idea that you're setting me up for an argument. What the hell's that all about? That makes me lose trust with the homeowner right away. So I let them know right away. And from that moment on, they understood that, that is not my job. My job isn't to have an argument with your plumber. Your plumber, listen, it was a very unfortunate thing. What's really interesting about this entire situation is when you install a pump in the middle of a pit, normally it has a lid. This is a storm pump, so we're not worried about sewage gases, so it's not contained very strongly, but normally you put a lid on this. And in the sump pumps that I've seen before, that lid usually secures the pump in the center somehow. It might not be strong around it, but it will only allow the pump to move a couple of inches left or right. When I looked at the lid of this sump pump, it had a very long line that went to the edge of the tile. So the pump had only one direction that it could flow and it could move, and that long line allowed the pump to travel all the way to the wall. Like it was a very unfortunate situation. I don't think the plumber at all realized that this could have happened. And to be honest, I learned it that day as well. Also, you have to know that the house went into inspections. Like there were permits that were pulled to be able to put this house together, and the inspector went in and signed off on these pumps as well. So it is very hard at this point to know who is actually at fault. I would be uncomfortable saying that this was malpractice because I don't think the plumber did this intentionally at all. I think they learned something in the most unfortunate way possible, which is because a leak took place, So it really broke my heart that the plumber was upset. First of all, I would be upset as well. It sounded like the homeowner was using my document, my report, to place blame on the plumber, which I don't think is fair. And also, the inspector missed it as well. So to place all the blame on the plumber, man, I don't know if that's fair. I have no idea. But I think hundreds of thousands of dollars are going into fixing this house up, knowing that the materials that they used are the best materials that you can use. It's just a bad situation altogether. And I also feel for the homeowner because, man, 5 months into finishing your house, this happens, I can appreciate why this person's upset, you know what I mean? So there's a lot going on in this situation that kind of broke my heart. I feel for all the parties at play. I learned a very valuable lesson myself, which is, first of all, I have to have something on my documents that say these aren't legal documents. They can't be used in the court of law. They can't be used to incriminate anybody. And also I learned that it's a very real thing that pumps can move and they can walk, and especially after multiple activations. So when I think about this and I put myself in the other plumber's shoes, I get just as concerned. I feel for them. I would hate to have to learn something under these circumstances, but unfortunately these things happen, fingers crossed that they don't, but we have to do our best, and we are limited in our knowledge, all of us. We are fallible, all of us. And this happening isn't an indication that this plumber was a bad plumber. They passed inspection, you know what I'm saying? So we know it was up to standard. Unfortunately, there was like a very fine detail that if that detail was kind of paid attention to, we could have avoided this. But again, I'm under the impression that the plumber didn't realize that this could have been a problem. I don't know. That's my take on the entire situation. I want to know what you all think. Let me know down in the comments below. Do you feel for that plumber? Do you think it's their fault? Do you think it's the inspector's fault? Do you hear the homeowner and do you feel for them the most? What are your thoughts? Let me know down in the comments below. Also, if there are any other conversations and topics you want me to cover, let me know in the comments below as well. I'll try to get to those. Do me a favor, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button down below and that bell notification so you know exactly when we're getting videos. Smash that thumbs up, share with friends, and I'll see you plumbers very soon. Kenny Molotov, guys. Peace, baby.